Ukraine is stepping up calls for Western allies to help with its air defences after Russia launched a series of large-scale missile attacks in recent weeks. Kyiv is still managing to shoot down most of the projectiles, but some are getting through, revealing the gaps in the country's air defences. Donald Trump recently announced plans to allow Ukraine to build its own Patriots under licence, but that'll take years. Ukraine needs the interceptors now.
No rest this weekend across many Ukrainian cities. Russian missiles have struck again, killing civilians in Sumy in the northeast, injuring several in Odessa, as well as in Kyiv and its surroundings. At least 10 civilians died in Russian attacks across the country. Ukrainian air defences were able to intercept the majority of drones and missiles, but Kyiv is more and more overwhelmed by ballistic missile threats from Russia. The problem, too few Patriot systems that are crucial to intercepting the projectiles. At last week's NATO summit in Ankara, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy secured a major win.
A little birdie told me this, about the fact that we'll give them the right to make Patriots. We'll show them how to do it. It's very complex, actually, but it's... you'll figure out the complexity quickly.
But experts warn that it could take years before these locally produced missile systems are actually combat ready. In response to the intensified Russian air attacks, Ukraine is hitting back deep inside Russia, targeting oil and transport infrastructure. The effects are already visible in Russia. Fuel shortages resulting in long queues at gas stations and a halt to diesel exports. Meanwhile, Kyiv is hoping its critical air defense gap can be closed as quickly as possible.
Justin Bronk is a senior research fellow for air power and technology in the military sciences team at the Royal United Services Institute. I asked why the lack of these American Patriots is so devastating for Ukraine when it has so many alternatives.
So the primary reason is because while Ukraine does have a range of multiple different types of air defense systems, ranging from European systems such as NASAMS or IRIS-T from Germany, and a lot of lower-end air defense systems for countering UAVs and other sort of short-range counter-battlefield drone or helicopter systems, Patriot is really the only effective system that Ukraine has in terms of ability to intercept the primary ballistic missiles which Russia uses, which have been steadily upgraded in terms of the way that they are programmed to behave in flight, as well as some of the electronic warfare features that they bring. There is the SAMP-T system, which is produced by primarily France and Italy, with the Aster 30 missile. That's about the closest European equivalent to Patriot, with either PAC-2 GEM-T or the later PAC-3 MSE missile. But it has proven significantly less effective than Patriot.
Right, so Patriot is the one. And what's causing the shortage? Why is Ukraine so short of these Patriot missiles?
Ukraine's supply of Patriot interceptors has been limited throughout the course of the war since they had them introduced in late 2022 by primarily US concerns about their stockpiles. And so there has been a limit to the number that the US was willing initially to donate itself. And then more recently, since the second Trump administration came into office, the number that the US has been willing to sell with European or Ukrainian funding to be delivered as sales. And that has become more pressing since the start of Operation Epic Fury, the US and Israeli intervention against Iran, where many years worth of annual global Patriot interceptor production have been fired against Iranian ballistic missiles, sometimes also cruise missiles and drones. So there is a global shortage of Patriots.
And do you see any indication that Russia is seeking to exploit this shortage?
Absolutely. So Russia has understood, because of the nature of the quite political and public way that Zelenskyy and others in the Ukrainian system have to appeal to try and kind of jump the queue, as it were, to get Patriot resupply when so many other countries are waiting. it means the Russians are very aware of the fact that Ukraine is desperately short of interceptors. So you see an increasing proportion of Russia's capacity to produce long-range missiles away from cruise missiles and towards ballistic missiles because Ukraine has so many fewer options to intercept the latter.
OK, so now Donald Trump has announced that Ukraine will be allowed to produce Patriots under licence. How long before those Ukraine-produced Patriots could actually be deployed? So there's a factory that needs to be built, presumably.
So not only a factory would need to be built, but the global bottleneck in terms of increasing production globally is actually in the wider subcomponent supply chain. So it's no use producing more missile bodies if you don't have the motors, all the different laser gyroscopes and warheads and all sorts of other things you need. And so Ukraine will not only have to build a capacity to build them, but also essentially let contracts with all of the subcontractors that are required around the world and negotiate kind of a place in the queue. So I think if everything goes brilliantly, you're still probably talking about 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
And if you look at Germany's own factory for producing Patriot Pack 2, which is a slightly older type of the missile, but that is more capable against aircraft at long range, that agreement was signed in 2024 for a factory in southern Germany with MBDA. And they are expecting, I believe, to deliver their first Patriot Pack 2 missiles in early 2027. So that's in a context where nobody is shooting at them because, of course, any big factory that's obvious in Ukraine, the Russians will target as a matter of priority.
Good talking to you, Justin. Thanks for taking us through that. Justin Bronk from the Royal United Services Institute. Well, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Paris today, talking up Kyiv's defence needs at a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. Ukraine and 9 other countries in this alliance, including Germany, have agreed to establish an anti-ballistic missile coalition in Europe. He aims to deter future missile threats by establishing an integrated defence architecture. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron also announced that Ukraine will purchase French Rafale fighter jets and Ukraine will be licensed to produce French Scalp missiles. Let's go to our correspondent, Lisa Louis, for the latest. Welcome, Lisa. The leaders are still in there talking. Just what have we learned at this stage?
Well, you just said it, there's lots of cooperation projects that have been announced or re-announced, really. One emphasis is really on anti-ballistic missiles here in Paris. As you know, earlier today, we had the first meeting of the new anti-ballistic coalition that met here in Paris with about 10 countries. And President Zelenskyy of Ukraine just gave a few more details during the press conference here at the Invalides Dome. He was saying that this coalition was going to join a project, a technological cooperation between a Ukrainian company and a German company that had been set up. These other countries and with a number of companies from these countries would join that project. And the idea is to come up with an anti-ballistic missile system within 12 months. As you know, time is of the essence because this is really the weakest point as we speak for Ukraine in this war against Russia today.
OK, so President Zelenskyy went there looking for Patriot missiles. He's coming away with a promise of something in about a year.
Absolutely. He's coming away with countries saying we want to find a way to make up for possible missing Patriot missiles. We know, as we just heard, that they've been also used, for example, in the war between Israel and the US against Iran. So Ukraine is really running low on missiles, and they're looking for all ways to fill up these stocks. Another idea that was floated by Chancellor Friedrich Merz was to put pressure on Spain and on Greece to send their Patriot missiles to Ukraine so that Ukraine could use them to defend themselves against Russia. And there's also, obviously, there are other systems in the market. Mr. Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, was underlining that this is not a competition, that several systems could be used for the defense of Ukraine. And Ukraine, he was also saying this is not just for Ukraine, but also for the whole of Europe to make Europe safer in case of a future war.
As you've been speaking, we've been looking at pictures of the leaders who are still speaking in the building behind you. What was promised today in terms of security guarantees, Lisa?
Well, security guarantees, there, as we know, several levels of security guarantees. The leaders are always underlining that the first level is really the Ukrainian army that should be supported with material. And the second level is this international peace force. And today they were officially announcing that the peace force is now ready to be deployed. This would obviously only be the case when there is a ceasefire, a peace agreement for Ukraine. President Macron, the president of France, said also today that military exercises would be carried out over the next months in adjacent countries to Ukraine. He said, we will show that we are ready to fight back and we shouldn't be giving in to an aggressor. We've seen in history, in the past, that this is not a good idea and we will stand our ground.
Thank you for that, Lisa. Lisa Louis in Paris.